Lots and lots of opening shots of this partly cloudy sky. And I understand showing the main credits before the feature starts, but can't you pan over Pittsburgh hotspots or anything to keep us interested? Three River Stadium? Bramante Brothers? Steel factories?
Here comes trouble.
Blowing your country. What is this, Fox News?
Tomorrow is Groundhog Day.
Roll 6 weeks of credits.
Rita thinks it would be a great idea to stay around for some of the other events.
Why do they need to send a producer to Puxatawny for this bullshit about the groundhog? Wouldn't Phil be his own producer on that segment? What a waste of station resources. Oh cool, this is my favorite scene in The Dark Knight Rises. I can't wait for Bane and his crew to break into the Gotham Stock Exchange, which is totally located in Gotham. Also, the movie forces you to stare into the awful, sinister eyes of Pittsburgh for longer than 5 seconds.
Someday somebody's going to see me interviewing a groundhog and think I don't have a future.
You're also in your early 40s, man. Who's watching groundhog footage for on-air talent? Anyway, you're a Pittsburgh weatherman. What kind of stories are you hoping to get?
I think it's a nice story. He comes out, he looks around, he wrinkles up his little nose.
Just how high is Andie MacDowell supposed to be acting right now? Because I think we're shooting for the 4 to 5 range, and she's clearly at a 14. Also, Puxatawny Phil does absolutely none of these things. You've been bought out by the Puxatawny Mafia. You can't say anything bad about the groundhog. They got the cops in their pockets. Also, not wearing your seatbelt in what is definitely a death trap of a van. Original weather capital of the world? What a lying piece of shit billboard this is. How much knob did you gobble to get that distinction? I strongly disagree with this theater marquee. Heidi 2 is where they got into some very adult themes, and it took the series in a markedly different direction from a family-friendly original that was so good it could interrupt an exciting pro football game.
I'm not staying here.
You're not staying here.
I'm not.
Did they seriously not tell Phil where he was staying during this entire drive to Puxatawny?
I booked you a very nice bed and breakfast in Cherry Street.
Bed and breakfasts.
Would you help me with my pelvic tilt?
And thus begins the first of many exhibits of sexual harassment by Phil in this movie. Sure, he turns things around eventually, but after what's probably years of abusive behavior with the workforce. Why does the loop start at 6 a.m.? Why doesn't it start the second after midnight on February 2nd, or when Phil first arrived in Puxatawny? It's not like he wasn't an asshole before he got there, or before he woke up that morning. And what if he woke up early? Does the deity that set this whole thing up really put all its trust in what looks like an old-ass alarm clock? Also, that's a massive alarm clock relative to the night table. Between that and the lamp and the flowers, there's barely a place for a glass of water, let alone a spot to stash your condoms, hold your whiskey bottle, and charge your phone.
Do you think Phil's gonna come out and see a shadow?
I know we have to hear this whole discussion between the DJs so that we'll have context for the subsequent days, but what about Phil's character would lead you to believe he put up with these blathering podunk personalities yapping away early in the morning? This is the type of guy that would not only hit the off button as hard as he could, he would immediately urinate on the clock for good measure.
I don't suppose there's any possibility of getting an espresso or a cappuccino this morning, is there?
Ah, the 90s, when you could truly prove your assholedom by mocking an establishment's lack of premium coffee options. Also, Phil must really be a fish out of water here, since he's used to the upscale accommodations in the thriving metropolis of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And at high altitudes, it's going to crystallize and give us what we call snow.
Philsplaining. This asshole's been waiting for years to see the official groundhog ceremony, and he writes out a sign that says, "Come to us, Phil." Nothing about winter or spring or shadows, just come to us. John 3:16 would have made more sense. Also, I thought the wacky morning DJs were complaining about how cold it is up here. If that's the case, why can't we see anyone's breath?
These people are great.
Positivity.
I definitely see a shadow.
This whole thing is rigged as hell, man. It's super cloudy out there and has been all morning. Not to mention there's a front coming in, and Phil even told the hotel manager that there was a bunch of moisture from the south that would be there until midday. My point is, why even have this charade of a performance if there's not a reasonable chance that the groundhog's prognostication would be based in reality? Hey, maybe that's what you get for making a groundhog your deity. You all know he's a no-good line. Also, how many of these people are going to keep track whether the groundhog was accurate or not? That's right, nobody. It's like when your grandmother gives you G.I. Joe soap for Christmas. You'll be like, yeah, I'll totally use that, Grandma. And then you'll forget about it, and 5 years later someone finds it in the attic next to the Dollenganger twins. Camping out in the left-hand lane when there's no one in the right-hand lane. And don't tell me it's because of the snow. That right lane is just as clear as the one they're in.
Hey,
It's time to sin real life here, because why do people honk their horns when they see this in front of them? Does this look like a situation that honking can solve? Walking out into a blizzard wearing this.
You can go back to Puxatawny, or you can go ahead and freeze to death.
I guess this is police hyperbole, like the time the asshole beat cop threatened to arrest me for being high on bath salts outside of the Denny's on Eastern Parkway. But are those really his only two options? I'm no expert on Western Pennsylvania, but I do know that there are other roads they can try to make their way back to Pittsburgh. Or, if they want to try and outrun a blizzard, they can always turn tail and head to the aforementioned Altoona, or spend the night in Harrisburg. Puxatawny or death are not the only options. Who gets in the shower and turns on the water on themselves before testing its warmth?
what is this, Miami Beach?
Does Phil really remember the morning show commentary from the day before? He looked like a goddamn zombie and was barely functional until he splashed some water on his face. How much do you pay attention to rando talk radio when you wake up?
It's Groundhog Day!
At this point in the radio broadcast from yesterday, the truck has already made its turn. But just so Phil gets the proper sense of sameness, everything is exact. Also, everything isn't exact. There are tiny differences from where the people are positioned to how many people are in the frame, to the fact that this car on the far right of the screen shows up here, but not in the earlier shot. Why didn't they just use the same shot?
It's Groundhog Day.
It's still just once a year, isn't it?
At this point, Phil should already know he's reliving the same day or is in a movie. Sure, it's totally up to think you might be reliving the same day, but the alternative is that you aren't, and you know what's going to happen, which is equally silly unless you're Miss Cleo's psychic.
Ha!
Doing this again.
I know there's a blizzard. When are the long-distance lines going to be repaired?
Why is he calling about this at 4:04 a.m.?
Well, what if there is no tomorrow? There wasn't one today.
Yes, I'm going to take a sin off for this irreverent movie about an irascible asshole just because it's goddamn magic how they not only pulled it off, but also made this thing a modern American classic. As fast as Phil darted out of the B&B today, there was no way the same lady from yesterday is here at this moment. In fact, he shouldn't be seeing Ned Ryerson at his usual time either, so eat me, movie I love.
When you get finished, come and meet me in the diner.
The blizzard hasn't come in yet, so why doesn't Phil immediately call the station or a friend or his mother when he realizes today is still the 2nd? He wastes so much time getting over to the festival, let alone the time it took to get his suit and tie on, which he could have used to get some actual help. Who does this guy think he is, M. Night Alfred Tarantino?
I told you there's a blizzard.
Oh, right, the blizzard.
I don't doubt that Dr. Egon is skeptical of some of Phil's claims, but he's making light of his prediction of the blizzard. Everyone knows that the blizzard is coming. Hell, even the B&B owner mentioned it earlier. So did the Wacky Morning DJs.
That's an unusual problem, Mr. Connors.
Jesus Christ, these folks sure are lucky that the few medical specialists in Puxatawny are available to see him at a moment's notice, despite there being a giant festival in town and massively increasing the population.
What would you do if you were stuck in one place and every day was exactly the same and nothing that you did mattered?
Now, that sums it up for me.
Let me ask you guys a question. What if there were no tomorrow?
Okay, but haven't you been talking about this exact subject all night? If not, why did the guy make the whole glass half empty or full analogy?
We could do whatever we want.
Louis DeJoy.
Sometimes I think you just have to take the big chances.
This is a funny sequence, but Phil's only been at this for presumably 3 days. How is he this confident that there will be no consequences for his actions, especially if they're lethal and or illegal? Non-consensual snorking. Now that Phil knows what and whom he's going to encounter on the way to the Groundhog celebration, why does he keep taking the same route? Wouldn't it be nice not to run into Ned Ryerson just once?
Ned?
The assault and battery sin would be bad enough, but none of these motherfuckers does anything to Phil for knocking this dude unconscious? I guess it's true what they say about Pennsylvanians. Also, now that Phil has realized there are no consequences to his actions, he goes to work the next day? I know he goes on to do other nefarious things later, but you'd think the first thing an asshole like Phil would do after getting out of bed would be something other than clocking in for his news spot. And yay, he remembered not to step in the puddle this time, but why did he even walk down to the same place he always does after he punched Ned? Why not cross the street right then and there?
What?
The wretch, concentered all in self.
Answering in poem. Doesn't this asshole ever try to get back to Pittsburgh before the blizzard comes in? If nothing matters, then he can risk not showing up for work to see if it breaks the spell.
Phil Connors!
Wow, that's amazing!
You don't remember me, do you?
Look, I know Phil is a dick, but manipulating this poor woman into f***ing him later in the day after creepily stealing her high school information is a whole different level of dickitude.
Rita.
Okay, one time makes sense, but twice after Nancy already called you out on it? This is the worst experience Nancy Taylor's had with a reporter since William Hurt fake cried in front of her in broadcast news.
Cue the truck.
Phil has memorized all the goings-on in the town square so that he can perfectly execute this robbery. But how long has he been in the time loop before now? 10 days? A month? A year? I'm just saying some indication of the length between the beginning of the realization and now would be mighty helpful in extracting some empathy for this supposed protagonist.
Can I have a roll of quarters?
Asking a f***ing armored truck operator for change.
Is this for real, Phil, or are you just trying to make me look like a fool?
In the original timeline, Phil was a pompous squad, but Rita still seemed to tolerate, if not appreciate him. So what's with this dour appraisal of him now? She hasn't been seeing all the squaddy stuff he's been doing in this town for God knows how long.
He's romantic and courageous.
Shortcuts has been describing her perfect man for what seems like 30 minutes here, and I can't help wondering how long she's had this answer to who's your perfect guy holstered and ready to blast for many years.
To the Groundhog.
Always drink to world peace.
Oh, so I guess that means you guys can't date then. And God, Rita sounds like Phil's a dick for even suggesting something other than world peace.
I like to say a prayer and drink to world peace.
To world peace.
Damn, that toast went straight to her vagina, didn't it?
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
The series of mistakes Phil makes as he tries to find the perfect date with Rita are amusing, and it cuts right to the same moment in time on the next day to show that he's learned from his mistake. But how does the date go after he makes one error? Can he learn more stuff even after that? Or does Rita just walk away from him and tell him, you don't like French poetry? Date over!
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
In fact, there's something kind of f***ed up about how all these characters in Groundhog Day are NPCs to Phil. It's like running into more fleshed out versions of Nigel from Jumanji. Hey, where the hell did all the snow come from? I know it's cold out there, but when they're at the festival, there's barely any on the ground. And when Phil looks out his window in the morning, there are just patches in the yards. The blizzard we keep hearing about doesn't hit Puxatawny. So how did they get enough to make this relatively huge snowman? Troubled youths. Unless one of them bought an extremely anachronistic Bluetooth speaker, they're dancing in complete silence, which only psychos would do.
I got some ice cream over on the windowsill. Well, hold on a minute.
Where did Phil get the time to buy ice cream, then bring it back to his room if he's been with Rita the whole day?
No. Tonight. It's gotta be tonight.
I'm getting real baby it's cold outside vibes from Phil right now.
Wasn't that great?
God, I love how this movie realizes that it's impossible to recreate spontaneous moments.
What are the Finger Lakes?
This f***ing guy, I don't care if you know the answers, do not be this f***ing guy.
What is the
Vaguely threatening Jeopardy questions. Doesn't it ruin the illusion when you put the groundhog in a cage and drive him away in a truck? If Phil were going to steal the groundhog to keep it from seeing its shadow, why didn't he do it before the formal announcement? It's got plenty of time from when he wakes up to when he's supposed to film the report. Luckily for Phil's groundhog kidnapping plan, the powers that be put the animal in a truck with the keys already in the ignition. Is this guy directing the other guy where to go? The f*** for? So he can tell people later that he helped? Scene inspires the shittiest Jeep commercial of all time. By the way, did Phil sedate this groundhog during the kidnapping? The thing is f***ing calm during all this commotion.
Hot dog! There's no way out except the way we came in.
Yeah, but why did you stop here? Why didn't the cops continue chasing after Phil? Is it because the movie needs Phil out of the picture for the moment to raise the tension for what he does next?
Oh my God.
This is either an overreaction to a blip in the electricity, or Mrs. Lancaster intuited that Phil killed himself with the toaster in the bath, and if it's the latter, it's some groundhog-sized bullshit. Not Bill Murray looks more like Richard Grieco than Bill Murray. Wow, the day doesn't end when Phil dies. If that's the case, what the f*** is going on? If this day requires Phil's enlightenment to proceed, what's the purpose of continuing it without him?
You're not a god. You can take my word for it. This is 12 years of Catholic school talking.
I'd argue that 12 years of Catholic school makes Rita the least qualified person to judge whether or not Phil's a god.
Works in the dress shop and makes noises like a chipmunk when she gets real excited.
F*** you, Phil. Does anybody else who loves this movie believe that Nancy Taylor deserves more in this movie than getting one night standed by Phil and then ridiculed for her sex noises later? It's kind of f***ed up. I know we're supposed to love Rita and shit, but I love Nancy Taylor. There, I said it.
In about 5 seconds, a waiter's gonna drop a tray of dishes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here's the thing, though. Phil is now going through the whole diner and making the timeline different than it normally is. So if he's been interrupting the flow of the restaurant, it's highly unlikely this waiter drops the dishes at all, let alone at the exact right time. Hell, the whole point of getting Phil unstuck in time is to change things around him for the better, so he has to impact his environment.
You guys ready? We better get going if we're gonna stay ahead of the weather.
This isn't technically a sin. It's a character error, I suppose. But Phil knows everything that's going to happen down to the inflection in people's voices, and he did not write this what Larry's gonna say note accurately.
I don't deserve someone like you, but if I ever could, I swear I would love you for the rest of my life.
When they do eventually get out of the loop, it's f***ed up to me that Rita will have to catch up to many years of Phil being in this relationship. Kind of like that I Watched You in Bed at the Hospital movie that was also hella popular in the mid-90s.
Did you say something?
This is the classic person tells another person how much they mean to them while they're sleeping, but they don't register it bit. But all meaning is lost, and she wouldn't remember it the next morning anyway.
See, I was just talking with Buster Green. He's the head groundhog honcho. And he said if we set up over here, we might get a better shot.
Okay, no doubt Phil would have gotten this information on many of the days he's done this same routine over and over. But it sounds like he's saying he just talked to the guy. And if that's the case, where did he talk to him? At the coffee shop? When has Phil ever had enough time to buy coffee and pastries and talk about the shot on any of these days?
Kind of want to get started. I could give you $1,000.
Where the hell did Phil get that much scratch? Did he rob the armored car again? which would count against his karma points. Certainly there are no ATMs out here with that high of a limit, and there's no way he brought that much cash from Pittsburgh with him. And because Phil needed to experience the perfect day, little Sally Jenkins here would never become the greatest pianist the world has ever seen. And before you say, well, this is just the first day that he practices, remember that at the end of all this, the piano teacher tells everyone at the party that he's her student. So he even did it on the last day when he didn't need any instruction. I know he's off, but this is a piano teacher, right? Isn't she used to hearing missed notes so much that this would be like white noise to her? I'm just going to go ahead and note that the director himself said Phil was in this loop for about 10 years. And I'm sorry, that's nowhere near enough time to get this good at ice sculpting, especially since he didn't start training for it until well into his run.
Not bad, Mr. Connors. You say this is your first lesson?
Yes, but my father was a piano mover, so.
Are you the one who brought the old man in?
A medical professional referring to her patient as the old man. Does Phil ever once think about taking this guy to the hospital right away? This is a nice and heartwarming gesture, but right after this it cuts straight to nighttime. Maybe the hospital could figure out something before the guy collapses?
When Chekhov saw the long winter, he saw a winter bleak and dark and bereft of hope.
Just what the hell did Phil do to attract the attention of all the other news outlets before he started making this speech? And look, I understand it's hilarious that he goes that deep when it's a Groundhog ceremony, but none of these reporters would give two shits about that. Oh no, because of this now Phil's gonna have to find a way to get George and Lorraine together at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. Jacking up the car before you loosen the lug nuts on the flat tire. Man, there's a lot of calamity in this town today. Sure, the flat tire was a minor inconvenience, but a kid fell out of a tree and nearly broke his neck. The old man can't stop dying, and this asshole chokes on a New York strip or whatever. The death toll on this holiday alone would set records in this small town. I feel like 80% of Andy McDowell's character arc in this movie is finding different ways to act surprised.
I just wanted to thank you for making Debbie go through with it and everything.
Michael Shannon isn't creepily ripping off his fingers in this scene.
I'm bid 60. Do I hear more?
$339.88.
Rita, these women were topping out at $60. You could have bid 70. I know the point of this is that you really wanted to show how much you like Phil, but this is just bad business. Nancy looks pissed, but now I'm wondering what the hell Phil did today that made her like him so much.
I don't think we're going to accept any more bids. I think that's sold.
Can't accept any more bids? Rita came out of nowhere with her checkbook, and there are a lot of ladies around here that have throbbing lady boners for Phil. Does Buster not want to make too much money on this charity auction?
One second. All right. Now let me turn the blade.
Holy I know he was in a time crunch and everything, but this sculpture looks like Rita was just frozen in carbonite and is about to be transported by Boba Fett to Jabba the Hutt.
I think I'm happy too.
Look, the movie's message is a great one. You can't force people to love you. Try hard is a phrase that translates into desperation. On the final day, Phil showed his value rather than advertising it. But this is still just one day. How the fuck is she in love with this guy already? Remember after the Groundhog ceremony, he's been gone all day. They just reunited like an hour or two ago. How is she this in love with him? We can't play the music, but the movie teases unobservant viewers into thinking that even this perfect day didn't change the calendar. It's at a different point in the song, but what are the chances that this radio station is playing I Got You Babe at the same time on consecutive days?
Anything different is good.
Hipsters. Also, how? Why? Phil's been doing this good deed thing for a while now, but how did he get just the right recipe? The old man is still dead, right?
Why weren't you like this last night? You just fell asleep.
It was the end of a very long day.
Bullshit. There's no way Phil, who was that much in love with Rita, just fell asleep on her, no matter how long the day was.
I think that we just get through the rest of today, we don't do anything too nuts, and then tonight, we pace the fuck out of this shit home.
For some reason, you all want to wear the CinemaSins Pitchfork M on your body. So we slapped that fucker on some new merch and threw it in the store. Posters, hoodies, socks. Click on the merch below the YouTube player or click the store link at cinemasins.com.
Go yourself, San Diego.
Nice dissolve.
Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
A deja vu is usually a glitch in the Matrix. It happens when they change something.
I'm fuzzy on the whole good-bad thing.
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
At sunset, we made love like sea otters.
Sometimes you eat the bar, and sometimes the bar, well, he eats you.
That was a pretty good day. What are you looking for? Who is your perfect guy?
You know, honestly, by the time you're 34, all the physical requirements just go out the window.
Hey, an assassin!
Son of a nutcracker!
I'm stuck. Does it get easier?
No. Yes. It gets easier. What did he die of?
Lou was old. That's what old people do, they die.
I'm doing the right thing.
Return plate.
It's amazing.